Hey guys, tonight we sail back, slowly, gently, into the muggy waters of the 17th century Caribbean. Your hammock sways beneath a rotting timber beam, and above you, the creak of sails reminds you that you're not in Kansas anymore. Or anywhere with a buffet. Tonight, we're diving into the real, oddly bland and mildly horrifying world of what pirates actually ate. Spoiler, it's mostly hard, dry, weirdly alive food. No, not in a good way. Imagine this: you wake up on a swaying wooden deck, salt sticking to your skin, and the smell of old fish, wet rope, and unwashed men already thick in your nose. Someone hands you a biscuit, and by biscuit, we mean a rock-hard slab of flour and water baked until it becomes a weapon. You take a bite and immediately regret it. Not just because it chips a tooth, but because something just wriggled. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I'm always curious who else is drifting off under the stars. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're new to the crew. You barely know how to tie a proper knot, but you know you're hungry. Your first meal aboard this fine, smelly vessel. Ship's biscuit. Also known as hardtack. It's flour, water, and fire. That's it. No salt. No oil. Nothing resembling flavor. And after a few weeks at sea, it's no longer just bread, it's a wildlife habitat. You tap the biscuit against the table. It makes a sound like stone on stone. Your crewmate laughs and says, "Don't worry, lad. Just tap the biscuit, wait for the weevils to crawl out, and knock him off." That's the trick. Don't eat the bugs unless you're really desperate. Though some pirates didn't mind. Bit of extra protein. Historians still argue whether the weevils were mostly tolerated, casually discarded, or enthusiastically consumed depending on rank, desperation, and maybe a warped sense of flavor. One captain's diary even notes that he preferred the taste of biscuit once the weevils had softened it. Yes. That's a thing that happened. The biscuits are kept in barrels, often damp ones. Mold grows. So does fungus. But if you scrape the green off, there's technically still food underneath. Sort of. You chew and chew and chew and eventually give up and just swallow the lump whole, like a pelican, to wash it down. A little warm water. From the same barrel everyone's been dipping into. Sometimes you get lucky and find floating things. Sometimes you don't. Either way, it smells faintly of seawater, rust, and dreams deferred. By now, you're wondering, why didn't they just bake fresh bread? Simple: no ovens. Fires on ships were dangerous, and ovens were rare outside Navy vessels. Pirate ships usually relied on preserved food. That meant anything that could be salted, dried, or fermented beyond recognition. Hardtack might last months or even years. That's not a good thing. It just means it outlives your dignity. The funny part: pirates actually preferred this diet to what they'd eaten in naval service. Royal Navy ships often had even worse rations, stricter discipline, and fewer chances to raid a Spanish treasure fleet for something fresher. So here you are, chewing on petrified biscuit, trying not to crack a molar, while the wind whistles through the rigging. Seagulls cry above, hoping to steal a bite. Even they don't want this biscuit. Once, in the early 1600s, an English privateer crew got so fed up with their biscuit rations that they threw the entire barrel overboard. And then later dove back in after it when hunger returned. They dried the soggy things over a lantern, cheered quietly, and crunched on as if it were a feast. That's pirate optimism for you. There's also something weirdly meditative about chewing something that doesn't want to be chewed. You tune out the noise of the ship. You ignore the grunts and snores of your bunkmates. You focus on this one stubborn, dry lump of barely food and think, maybe this life isn't so bad. Then a weevil crawls up your sleeve and you rethink everything. Back on shore, bakers made hardtack en masse, sometimes weeks in advance, letting them dry in the sun until they could be stacked like bricks. In fact, hardtack was occasionally used as bricks. That's not a joke. You shift on the wooden bench, glance at the horizon, and try to imagine something better. A warm pie. A soft roll. Even a slightly stale slice of bread would feel like luxury. But for now, it's you, your biscuit, and the open sea. The cook walks by, laughing, says, "Eat up, lad." That's just the starter. You swallow hard, literally, and brace yourself for the next course. The next thing shoved into your hands is a slab of what looks like shoe leather soaked in seawater. It's salt beef, though calling it beef is generous. You lift it to your nose. Mistake. The smell hits you like a damp barn. A very old barn. That used to house cows. In the 1500s, you tear a chunk off with your teeth, chewing for what feels like a solid decade. It's tough. It's dry. It fights back. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you suspect this might not even be beef. But the cook swears it is. Then he laughs. You laugh, too. Weekly, salted meat was a staple on any pirate ship. It lasted months. Sometimes. If it didn't rot. Or get maggots. Or grow a thick coat of mold. But hey. If you boil it long enough, the maggots float to the top and the mold comes off in sheets. Yum. Historians still argue whether pirate crews had any real method for judging the meat's freshness, or if they just trusted their noses, and their stomachs. There are logs of crews becoming violently ill after eating bad meat, but also tales of salty cuts being shared proudly, even fondly, among seasoned pirates who had no taste buds left to offend. And here's the thing, this meat is really salty. Like, my tongue has gone numb salty. That's by design. Salt draws out moisture, keeps bacteria from turning your dinner into a science experiment, and prevents the kind of spoilage that would send an entire crew to the bottom of the sea with stomach cramps and regret. Of course, to make it edible, you've got to soak it. Pirates would throw the meat into a pot of water for hours. Sometimes, they'd boil it multiple times. You know that saying, boil it until it's dead? This stuff gets boiled until it's a ghost. You sit next to the pot, watching gray bubbles rise through a greasy surface. The smell of brine and beef fat fills the air. It's not terrible. But it clings to your clothes, your hair, your soul. Later, when it cools, the fat congeals into a wobbly layer of something you probably shouldn't poke. So of course, you poke it. The cook tosses in some dried peas, maybe a bit of old onion if it hasn't sprouted. No seasoning. No pepper. And definitely no garlic, too expensive, too exotic, and pirates weren't exactly stopping by Whole Foods. Sometimes, to make the meat stretch, the cook would shred it into a kind of stew. A salty mush of beef, biscuit crumbs, and boiled water. They called it slush or lobscouse. It looked like something dredged up from a swamp. Tasted like salt and despair. And yet, you eat every bite. You have to. No one's throwing anything away, the only real alternative. Starving. Or stealing. Or both. Pirate captains often prioritized food stores during raids. They'd seize barrels of meat, flour, dried legumes, and anything vaguely chewable. One ship's log from 1678 describes pirates ignoring a chest of silver to get to the Spanish galleon's pork barrels. That's how desperate things could get. You shift your jaw, trying to unstick a piece of salt beef from your molars. You're pretty sure it's been there since yesterday. Maybe it's part of you now. One of the more fringe accounts, unverified but often repeated, claims that during long voyages, some pirates would use scraps of salt beef to patch leaks. It was waterproof, tough as canvas, and smelled just bad enough to scare off sharks. True. Who knows? But you're not entirely surprised. When the crew ran low on meat, they'd supplement with something even worse, junk. That was the term for cuts so fatty, so sinewy, so nearly meatless that even dogs turned up their noses. But again, if you boil it long enough, it sort of melts into a greasy soup. Add some biscuit crumbs, and tada. Dinner is served. You remember hearing about a pirate ship that tried to pickle meat in rum to preserve it. Sounds fancy, right? It wasn't. It just ruined the rum. And the meat. But it did inspire a few drunken meals and at least one duel over the last chunk of rum ham. You lean back, stomach full, kind of. You're not satisfied, but you're not empty either. The salt has dried your mouth out. Your tongue feels like driftwood. But there's a breeze coming through the rigging. A moon rising over the black water. And the smell of beef, if you can call it that, is finally fading. Across the deck, a crewmate hums a tune about roast goose and gravy. You want to punch him. Or hug him. You're not sure which. You just miss goose. Or gravy. Or food that doesn't fight you back. Still, you're alive. You're learning. You're chewing. And tonight, that's good enough. The sun's beating down on the deck, and your mouth still tastes like a salt mine. Your stomach rumbles again, in that hollow, slightly accusatory way. Fortunately, or not, it's about time for another meal. This one, you're told, includes fruit. You perk up. Fruit sounds promising. Fresh, even. Juicy. Vibrant. You think of peaches, mangoes, maybe even a banana. Instead, you're handed a small wooden crate with something round and shriveled rattling inside. Dried citrus. Possibly a lime. Possibly an ancient marble that lost its color. Still, it's more exciting than the biscuit brick or the leather beef from yesterday. The truth is, citrus was gold on ships like this. Lemons, limes. Even bitter oranges were hoarded like treasure, not just because they broke up the salt and sawdust diet, but because they had the power to fight off the most feared disease on the ocean, scurvy. You've probably heard of scurvy, gums bleeding, teeth falling out, strange lethargy that makes even tying a knot feel like mountain climbing. But what you might not know is that for most of the 17th century, sailors, and pirates, had no idea what actually caused it. Historians still argue whether most pirate crews understood the connection between citrus and survival or if they just happened to eat fruit when they raided tropical ports. Some captains swore by lemon juice, making sure their men got a few spoonfuls a week. Others mocked the idea, until their crew's teeth started clinking into their soup bowls. The British Navy wouldn't make citrus mandatory until the 18th century. But pirates? They had their own logic. When they looted a Spanish ship and found barrels of preserved lime juice, they took it. Not for health reasons. For flavor. Even pirates got bored of salt, so here you are, sucking on a piece of dried lime like it's candy. It's bitter, tough, but oddly refreshing. It reminds you of something almost clean. Almost hopeful. One clever pirate, maybe a little too clever, had the idea of mixing lime juice with his daily rum ration. The rest of the crew followed suit. Thus was born one of history's happiest accidents, grog with a citrus twist. It didn't just lift spirits, it kept scurvy at bay. Though the drink was more water than rum, it was still more appealing than anything the cook was boiling below. You sit on the railing, legs swinging, and nibble the last leathery bit of peel. A parrot on the next ship squawks something that sounds vaguely like "no more lemons," and you wonder if even the birds are over it. Down below, there's talk of citrus theft. Someone snuck into the fruit stores last night. Not for the juice, but to make a little trade. 2 pieces of lime for a length of clean rope. That's the market value now. Forget gold. On a ship with moldy biscuits and meaty regrets, vitamin C is the new currency. Occasionally, pirates would raid island villages not just for treasure or food but for gardens. A grove of limes, a few rows of sugarcane, maybe even a mango tree. The haul might not impress a Royal Navy officer, but to a sea-tossed, vitamin-starved crew, it was the real prize. One ship's log from a French pirate sloop in 1664 mentions a crewman who claimed to feel reborn after eating 2 oranges in a row. The same log mentions that he later fell overboard while dancing. So, Mixed results. You think back to your first few days aboard. The hardtack. The salt beef. The way everyone looked slightly gray. But now, after a bit of fruit, the ship feels different. Still filthy, yes, but maybe a tiny bit brighter. You pass a fellow sailor sucking on a slice of lemon like it's the world's sourest lollipop. He grimaces, then smiles. You get it. It's not about taste. It's about remembering you're alive. The cook, seeing the crew's spirits rise, decides to experiment. He throws dried citrus peel into the next stew. It doesn't help much. But you all cheer anyway. You're pirates. You've eaten worse. Later that night, someone pulls out a fiddle. A sleepy tune drifts over the water. You sway with the rhythm, belly full, sort of, and teeth mostly still intact. You feel a little less like a drifting barnacle, a little more like a human again. You fall asleep to the sound of gentle waves, dreaming of orange groves and actual juice. Morning breaks with a chorus of creaking timber, groaning ropes, and your own stomach, which has decided to start its protest early. You stumble toward the galley, or rather, the collection of barrels and a firebox pretending to be a kitchen, hoping for something, anything, that doesn't crunch, fight back, or crawl. Today's menu starts with rum. Yes, rum. Not pancakes. Not porridge. Just a thick, warm swig of fermented molasses and questionable decisions. On pirate ships, rum isn't just a drink, it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, and sometimes medicine. It's how you toast your survival and wash down your regrets. The ship's quartermaster hands you a dented tin cup. Half ration, he mutters. You nod, take a sip. It burns. And not just your throat, your eyes sting a little too. Is that a good sign? Probably not. You're pretty sure this batch was stored in a barrel that used to hold tar. Still, it's something. Pirates were infamous for their rum. Thanks to the Caribbean's booming sugarcane industry, molasses, and by extension, rum, was everywhere. Some pirates even raided plantations just to steal it, ignoring the silver if there was a cask of good stuff lying around. Good, of course, being relative, historians still argue whether the rum was truly a pirate's choice, or simply what was left after better alcohols were looted. Either way, it became part of the pirate brand. A bit of rum in the morning kept morale high. A bit more in the afternoon dulled the taste of the salt beef. And by evening, you barely remembered the biscuit fight from earlier. Now, hydration. Let's talk about that. Clean water on a pirate ship is about as rare as an honest tax collector. Rainwater barrels dot the deck, open-topped, filled with whatever the heavens provide. You're supposed to drink only from those. But after a few days of sun and seagull deposits, things get a little green. A little chunky. Still, it's better than the stored water down below. That water has been sitting in wooden casks for weeks. It smells like it. Sometimes, it tastes like death dipped in driftwood. But you hold your nose and gulp it anyway. To help, pirates often cut their water with, you guessed it, rum. This is grog, in its most basic form. Watered down alcohol that hopefully kills a few germs and numbs your tongue to the rest. Some captains even rationed grog like treasure, making sure it was fair and, well, not exactly balanced, but at least nobody got shorted. One clever cook, after watching half the crew gag on rain barrel brew, decided to filter the water through a piece of linen. It worked. Sort of. Until the cloth itself started to rot. So much for innovation. You find a quiet spot near the bow, rum tin in hand. A breeze cools your face. You look out over the vast, endless water and wonder how much of it you trade for just one clean cup. Hydration was critical, especially under a tropical sun. Dehydration didn't just mean fatigue, it meant heat stroke, delirium, and in extreme cases, death. Pirates knew this. That's why even the surliest among them would dip a finger in the water barrel, sniff it, then drink with slow respect. Sometimes, they'd flavor the water. Dried fruit peels. Spices. even bits of sugar when available. Not for taste, just to distract from the reality. One French pirate ship in 1683 reportedly used burnt bread crumbs to clarify the water. No one knows if it worked. But they drank it anyway. You sip your grog again. This time, it's cooler. Smoother. Maybe your taste buds have surrendered. Or maybe, just maybe, you're getting used to it. Later in the day, a sudden squall hits. Rain pelts the deck. The crew leaps into action, buckets, barrels, even boots held high to collect the fresh drops. You follow suit, raising your tin cup like it's a holy relic. Still, it's better than the stored water down below. That water has been sitting in wooden casks for weeks. It smells like it. Sometimes, it tastes like death dipped in driftwood. But you hold your nose and gulp it anyway. To help, pirates often cut their water with, you guessed it, rum. This is grog, in its most basic form. Watered-down alcohol that hopefully kills a few germs and numbs your tongue to the rest. Some captains even rationed grog like treasure, making sure it was fair and, well, not exactly balanced, but at least nobody got shorted. One clever cook, after watching half the crew gag on rain barrel brew, decided to filter the water through a piece of linen. It worked. Sort of. Until the cloth itself started to rot. So much for innovation. You find a quiet spot near the bow, rum tin in hand. A breeze cools your face. You look out over the vast, endless water and wonder how much of it you trade for just one clean cup. Hydration was critical, especially under a tropical sun. Dehydration didn't just mean fatigue, it meant heatstroke, delirium, and in extreme cases, death. Pirates knew this. That's why even the surliest among them would dip a finger in the water barrel, sniff it, then drink with slow respect. Sometimes, they'd flavor the water. Dried fruit peels. Spices. Even bits of sugar when available. Not for taste, just to distract from the reality. One French pirate ship in 1683 reportedly used burnt bread crumbs to clarify the water. No one knows if it worked. But they drank it anyway. You sip your grog again. This time, it's cooler. Smoother. Maybe your taste buds have surrendered. Or maybe, just maybe, you're getting used to it. Later in the day, a sudden squall hits. Rain pelts the deck. The crew leaps into action, buckets, barrels, even boots held high to collect the fresh drops. You follow suit, raising your tin cup like it's a holy relic. Afternoon heat shimmers off the deck, turning the wood into a frying pan and your brain into lukewarm porridge. The cook shouts something unintelligible below deck, likely in protest to yet another rat theft, and moments later, a rope line comes swinging over the side of the ship. It's baited with something oily and unidentifiable. Today, you're fishing for dinner. You lean over the railing, squinting at the water's surface. It sparkles innocently, hiding a world that's far more generous than your biscuit barrel. The ocean, when she's feeling kind, gives up her bounty to pirates willing to wait, sweat, and maybe smell like mackerel for a few hours. It turns out, pirates were surprisingly resourceful when it came to fish. Long voyages meant dwindling stores, so catching your own food wasn't just smart, it was survival. Lines were cast daily. Nets, if available, were stretched out at night and pulled in by bleary-eyed deckhands. Come dawn, you drop a line overboard, the sun hot on your neck. A flying fish schemes by, skittering across the surface like it's late for something. You're told they sometimes just flop onto the deck, stunned. Dinner that volunteers, how considerate, and sometimes, they caught eels. Big, coiling, slimy things that were surprisingly easy to trap but harder to prepare. One pirate reportedly used his boot to stun one unconscious. Another just stared at it until it stopped moving. Unverified, but poetic, the ship's cook, to his credit, knew a dozen ways to turn a fish into something borderline edible. Roasted over a flame with a bit of dried seaweed for flavor. Stewed in salt water with onions, if there were any. Or, if pressed, just sliced raw and passed around like the world's worst sashimi. Historians still debate how often pirates relied on fishing versus stealing food during raids. Some argue that fishing was a last resort. Others believe it was routine, part of the daily rhythm: mend sails, swab the deck, and throw a line. Either way, the sea became their pantry. You feel a tug, sharp and urgent. Your hands tighten around the line, rope burning your palms as something fights beneath. It's not big, but it's strong. You haul it in, heart thumping from the thrill, and up comes a silver flash, a jackfish, maybe, or a small barracuda. The crew gathers, impressed. The cook grins, already sharpening a knife. You feel like a hero. Tonight, it'll be something fresh. Something not pickled. Something that doesn't crumble like chalk or taste like shoe sole. While you bask in your fishy triumph, you hear a tale from an older sailor, a story about a captain who once caught a shark. They ate it for 3 days straight. On the 4th day, the crew mutinied, not out of hunger, but boredom. Turns out, even fresh meat gets old when it's all you have. Flying fish were a favorite, easy to clean, fast to cook. They often landed on the deck mid-flight, stunned and flapping. Pirates would toss them straight onto the fire, no prep. You imagine the sizzling sound, the quick pop of salty oil, and your stomach growls in appreciation. There's also talk of jellyfish. No one's entirely sure if it's food. Someone once tried drying one and using it in soup. The result? Texturally confusing, says the cook. You make a mental note to never eat jellyfish unless it's the last thing left between you and your boots. Occasionally, you'd come across a pod of dolphins. Beautiful. Majestic. Off limits. Even the roughest pirate would pause to admire them, mutter, even if only for a moment, "Lucky they're not fish," one crewmate whispers, a half-smile forming. Too smart to eat. And indeed, despite the crew's fierce appetites and questionable ethics, some things were spared. Whether from sentiment, superstition, or simply taste, dolphins weren't touched, but sea turtles. Different story. Later that day, someone spots one, its domed shell bobbing just below the waves like a floating barrel lid. The cry goes out, "Turtle off port." And suddenly, the deck explodes into action. Nets fly, ropes are readied. And within minutes, the crew hauls the creature up over the side with a heave and cheer. You watch it flop gently on the deck, confused, ancient, and thoroughly unimpressed. It blinks slowly, as if it's already resigned to its fate. You feel a pang of guilt. Then your stomach growls again. Turtles were considered premium meat, tender, oily, and oddly sweet. Unlike the boots and brine texture of salt beef, turtle flesh was something closer to veal. Rich, juicy, and best of all, abundant. One turtle could feed a crew of 30 for 2 days. Some pirates kept them alive on board for weeks, flipped on their backs so they couldn't escape, their slow blinking eyes forever casting judgment. Portable meat, basically. It's grim, but efficient. And in the pirate world, efficiency often beat ethics. You help carry this one to the cook's corner. He nods approvingly and begins the messy work. The smell is oddly pleasant, earthy and oily. He pulls out the liver first, muttering about how it's the best part if you can stand the texture. Someone next to you claims it tastes like the sea cried on a steak. You're not sure what that means, but you'll try anything once. Historians still argue about the role of sea turtles in long-haul voyages. Were they truly reliable as food storage, or did the romanticism of turtle soup outshine the logistical nightmares of keeping them alive on deck? One captain wrote of a mutiny sparked entirely over who ate the last leg. Another claimed they brought good luck when caught during a storm. Either way, the creatures were deeply entwined in seafaring life. The soup that night is thick and buttery. It has bits of white meat, turtle fat, and even some roots and wild herbs foraged from a recent island stop. It smells real. Almost like land. You sip slowly, savoring every drop like it's the last warmth you'll ever feel. Beside you, someone hums a shanty. A low, slow tune about turtle stew and a woman named Sal who could wrestle one with her bare hands. It's probably not true. But who cares? You're warm, full, and almost happy. The crew sits quieter than usual, bellies rounded and content. For a few short hours, no one's fighting. No one's cursing the biscuit barrel. You lean back, watching the stars rise into a sky clearer than any you've seen on land, and as the ship rocks gently beneath you, your eyelids drooping, your last thought before sleep is surprisingly tender, thank goodness for the sea, and the strange, generous creatures drifting within it. Your bones are just starting to settle into a decent nap when the ship jerks beneath you. A thud, a splash, and the cook is shouting again. Island ahead. He bellows, far too cheerfully for someone who just spent 2 hours elbow deep in turtle. You rub your eyes and sit up, blinking at the palm-lined horizon. Shore leave. Not for pleasure, there are no cabanas here, but for food. You and the crew lower a skiff, oars dipping into turquoise water as you glide toward white sand and the sweet smell of not salt beef. Tropical islands were a lifeline for pirates. These weren't the grand ports with pubs and parades, they were tiny, hidden, and often uninhabited. But they had something your ship desperately needed: fresh food and variety. And maybe, just maybe, a mango. Your feet hit the sand with a satisfying crunch. It's hot, real ground, not swaying boards, and already, the crew has scattered. Some head toward the trees with baskets, others dig near tidipools. You get assigned firewood duty, because apparently, catching a fish yesterday doesn't give you permanent VIP status. Still, you wander off path a little. There's birdsong in the air, sharp and sudden. Crabs dart sideways. The jungle buzzes, alive and damp. You spot wild bananas, not the kind you're used to, but small, stubby things with firm flesh and odd seeds. They taste slightly chalky, but still a delight after biscuit dust. Further inland, someone finds yams. Big, knobby roots that grow under tangled green vines. The cook's already peeling them by the time you return. Gonna roast these with some turtle fat, he says. Make 'em crispy. You nod like that's normal. Meanwhile, 2 crewmates chase a wild pig. It escapes, but not before one of them twists an ankle and declares eternal vengeance. You help him limp back to camp while he swears poetic oaths about bacon. The fire is already crackling. Smoke curls up into the dense trees. Food on land means real heat, something you can't manage safely on a wooden ship. Tonight, there will be flames, searing edges, and maybe even a little charring. You haven't been this excited in days. Historians still argue how often pirates stop for island feasts like this. Some logs suggest frequent visits, others portray them as rare breaks during longer voyages. What's clear is that when pirates did find an island worth stopping for, they didn't waste time. They foraged, hunted, smoked, and ate everything they could carry, dinners served on palm leaves. There's roasted yam, boiled crab legs, and a mango that was probably slightly unripe but still tastes like sunshine. A squirrel was caught. No one admits who cooked it. No one asks questions. You just chew and hope you didn't eat someone's pet. Even better, coconut water. Fresh. Cold. Dripping down your chin. It tastes like magic. One pirate tries to ferment it on the spot by burying it in the sand with rum. It doesn't work, but you admire the dedication. The firelight flickers on tired faces. Bellies are full, or at least fuller than usual. The ship looms in the background like a jealous sibling, still floating, still home, but far less welcoming than the dirt beneath your boots. You scrape the last bits of yam off your leaf. You sit back, toes in the sand, the stars beginning to spill across the sky like salt across a table. Someone passes a pipe. Someone else hums a lullaby in a language you don't know, and for the first time in a long while, the crew isn't just fed. They're happy. Even the cook cracks a grin. You fall asleep that night near the fire, the scent of roasted roots still on your hands. No creaking deck. No rat fights. Just crickets, waves, and the soft sigh of leaves in the wind. The next morning, you wake with sand in your ears, smoke in your hair, and a piece of yam still clinging to your sleeve. The fire has died down to warm coals, and someone is already stirring a pot of something over the embers. The scent wafts up, savory, strange, and almost appetizing. You blink the sleep from your eyes and spot him, the cook, hunched beside the pot like a grumpy wizard over a bubbling spell. A battered ladle in one hand, a stained apron that might have once been white in another life. Everyone avoids his temper. But today, you're curious. Ship's cooks don't get much glory in the stories. No buried treasure, no swinging from ropes. But in truth, they were heroes in their own greasy way. On a pirate ship, food could make or break morale. And one cook with half a brain and a few tricks could keep a crew together longer than any captain, your cook. His name is Henley. Probably. No one's sure. He has 6 fingers on one hand, a scar across one eye, and a voice like a barrel rolling down stairs. He rarely speaks, unless someone complains about the stew. This morning, he's making breakfast. Which means leftovers, warmed over, with a handful of something green tossed in for texture. Seaweed, maybe. Or herbs. Or just moss. You don't ask, he hands you a bowl without looking up. It smells like last night's yams, the boiled crab shells, and, is that coconut? You take a bite. It's not bad. A little gritty, but warm. Comforting. You nod your thanks. He grunts. Cooks like Henley were responsible for miracles. They had to make food stretch, keep it safe-ish, and somehow not poison the crew. Historians still argue whether pirate cooks followed formal Navy training or were just anyone who didn't mind fire and smelled worse than the meat. Henley doesn't seem like the trained type, but he knows what he's doing. Back on the ship later that day, you watch him at work. He checks barrels by smell, shakes old biscuit tins to listen for bugs, and mutters curses at a slab of meat he insists is too polite to rot, but not brave enough to be edible. He sharpens his knives slowly, with a rhythm that's oddly calming. The blades are mismatched, some probably stolen, others repurposed from lost cutlasses. But they're sharp enough to shave a rat, and once you saw him actually do that. No one remembers why. No one asked. Cooks had their own private stashes, too, hidden tins of nutmeg or pepper, secret spoonfuls of sugar kept back for special occasions. A birthday. A victory. A bribe. Henley had a tin marked "Do not touch or die." Inside, dried garlic and 2 precious chili peppers. Once, you watched him boil fish bones for hours until they softened into a broth. He thickened it with biscuit crumbs, added salted pork scrap, and called it sea stew. You watched hardened pirates go back for seconds. Someone even cried. Fringe accounts tell of cooks who used seawater as stock base, dangerous, but with the right mix of ingredients, it masked bad meat. Others flavored soups with barnacles or jellyfish. One log from 1693 mentions a stew that made half the crew hallucinate. No one blamed the cook. It was the sea's fault, they said. You also learn that the cook had authority. Maybe not over navigation or treasure. But in the galley, his word was law. Henley once chased a quartermaster off with a ladle for sneaking dried mango. The crew cheered. Later, the mango was returned, bruised but intact. Even pirates need someone to scold them about portion sizes, but for all his yelling, Henley had a soft spot. When a young deckhand lost a tooth on a biscuit, Henley quietly swapped out his meals for softened stew for a week. Didn't say a word. Just ladled and nodded. Tonight's dinner. Fish stew. Again. But this time, Henley adds something new, a splash of fermented tamarind, scavenged from a market raid last month. It's tangy. Almost refreshing. The crew eats in near silence, licking bowls and eyeing the pot like dogs waiting for seconds. You sit nearby, bowl in hand, and watch the man himself settle in for his meal. Alone. Quiet. He takes one bite, chews slowly, then smiles. It's a rare thing. You look away, pretending not to see it, the stars rise again. The sea rocks beneath the hull. And the pot, scraped clean, swings gently from its hook. Henley hums a tune as he sharpens his blade for tomorrow's mystery meat. You're woken before dawn by the unmistakable sound of cannon fire. Not a battle, just the gunners practicing. Again. Apparently, they believe in starting the day with noise, smoke, and the distinct scent of sulfur, because what could be more invigorating than the looming threat of accidental amputation? You groan, sit up, and immediately crave something warm. Something soft. Something not loud. Unfortunately, this morning's breakfast is ship's biscuit. You've met ship's biscuit before. You hoped it wouldn't return. Yet here it is, looking just as inedible as ever, a hard, round puck of flour, water, and despair. It's not bread. It's barely food. It's what happens when hope is baked until it dies. You bite down. It resists. You try again. It resists harder. Eventually, you crack a piece off with the help of a spoon handle and a well-placed curse. You chew slowly. Very slowly. It's dry. It's dusty. There's a faint taste of mold and something that might be old rope. Historians still debate the exact composition of 17th century ship's biscuit. Most agree it was made with flour and water, baked multiple times until it was nearly immortal. Some logs describe biscuits surviving decades. Others claim they were used as emergency ammunition. They weren't meant to taste good. They were meant to survive the apocalypse, the best part. The bugs, oh yes. Weevils. Tiny beetles that loved the warm. Dry biscuit barrels. You're told not to worry. Adds protein, the quartermaster jokes as he knocks his biscuit against the mast. A couple weevils tumble out like they've just been evicted. You shake yours. No movement. That's either good or very, very bad. Pirates had a few tricks to deal with the weevils. Dunk the biscuit in coffee, if you had any. Or grog. Or stew. Anything to soften it and drown the squatters. Some would toast them in a pan to crisp them back to life. One old sailor swears by smashing them with the butt of a knife before eating. You nod, pretending not to gag. This morning, you opt for stew dunking. Last night's fish broth still lingers in the bottom of the pot. You dip the biscuit in, count to 10, then chew again. It's better. Not great. But you can chew it without losing a molar, which is progress. Some pirate ships tried to improve their biscuits. Adding a bit of honey. A pinch of salt. A brave few even flavored them with dried herbs. But the result was usually the same, dense, dry, and faintly fungal. And yet, you eat them. Because there's nothing else. There's a story passed around the crew, probably fake, but comforting, about a cook who carved love letters into each biscuit before baking. His wife supposedly found one decades later in a barrel and cried. You want to believe it, even if your own biscuit only has a suspicious crack shaped vaguely like a map of Spain. You find a quiet corner on deck, nibbling your softened ration while staring out at the endless blue. A few seagulls circle overhead, eyeing your food with interest. You glare at them. This is mine, you whisper. They don't care. They've probably eaten better. Suddenly, a younger sailor curses and spits out a chunk of biscuit, revealing a tiny bone inside. A fish bone? A rat bone? No one knows. The cook shrugs and says, extra calcium. Everyone laughs. Nervously, somewhere below deck, Henley's banging on barrels again. Probably checking for mold. Or ghosts. You're not sure anymore. Later that day, during downtime, one of the older crew members pulls out a sack and hands you something flat and thin, hardtack art. He's scratched little designs into a few old biscuits, faces, ships, stars. You run your fingers over the rough carvings. It's surprisingly delicate for something that once chipped a tooth. In truth, ship's biscuit wasn't just food. It was time filler. It was trade. It was entertainment. Pirates gambled with them, carved messages into them, used them as coasters, shims, or makeshift tools. One log even describes a crewmate using biscuit crumbs to polish his boots. Tonight, you store your last piece carefully. It's inedible now, cracked, brittle, and slightly green, but somehow you can't toss it. It's your badge of survival. Of chewing through adversity, literally, and as the ship rocks gently under the stars, you smile, teeth sore but intact. Tomorrow, there may be turtle. Or fish. Or stew. But tonight? You earned every bite of that terrible, unyielding biscuit. The sun rises hot and fast, like it's trying to cook you where you stand. You wipe sweat from your brow and try not to think about how many days it's been since you had a meal that didn't fight back. Fortunately, or perhaps unfortunately, it's market day. You're not raiding a Spanish galleon today. No gunpowder, no swords. Just an uneasy truce and a ramshackle dock near a quiet colonial port. A place where pirates can trade, discreetly, with local merchants who pretend not to recognize you. Privateers, they call you with a wink. Sure. Let's go with that. The air smells like spices and fish. Smoke wafts from open-air grills. You step off the longboat and into a maze of baskets. Crates, and people yelling prices in 3 different languages. You dodge a goat. A child tries to sell you a mango the size of your head. You're immediately overwhelmed, and slightly drooling. These unofficial ports, coastal hideaways and fringe colonies, were vital lifelines for pirates. Here, they could restock food, buy tools, or bribe officials to look the other way. Some markets even specialized in catering to rogue ships. As long as you had something to trade, silver, stolen textiles, or barrels of rum, you were welcome. Your crew splits up. One group heads for fruit. Another seeks dry goods. You're on spice duty. The quartermaster thinks a few sprigs of cinnamon might lift morale. You're skeptical, but also intrigued. You pass stalls selling cassava root, salted cod, dried tamarind, wild chilies, and something labeled smoked something. You don't ask. You do, however, grab a small sack of nutmeg and a tightly wrapped brick of brown sugar, both of which feel like forbidden treasure. Historians still debate how much access pirates had to high-quality ingredients. Some argue they scavenged whatever they could, others believe savvy captains knew exactly where to find black market spice routes and made regular stops. Evidence suggests that many pirates, especially in the Caribbean, enjoyed brief but glorious feasts after a successful loot. Before returning to the usual biscuit-based despair, you haggle with a woman selling yams. She eyes your belt dagger, then agrees to trade for half a pouch of tobacco. Deal. She even throws in a sprig of thyme with a smile. You feel like a gourmet chef already. Back on the boat, your spoils are laid out for inspection. Henley sniffs the nutmeg. Nods solemnly, and pockets it. The brown sugar earns a raised eyebrow. Might not be cursed, he mutters. High praise. That night's dinner is a stew, of course, but it's different. Spicier. Darker. Richer. Henley tosses in chilies, slivers of dried mango, and even a hint of cinnamon bark. The whole crew notices. There's murmuring. Even the quartermaster goes back for seconds. As you eat, a musician starts tapping a slow rhythm on an overturned bucket. Someone adds a whistle. Then a third starts a low, droning song in a language none of you speak. It's haunting. A lullaby from a land you'll never see. This, too, was part of pirate life, moments of surreal calm in a life otherwise spent bracing for storm or sword. You imagine yourself not as a rogue, but as a wandering cook, chasing flavors across oceans. Could you trade your dagger for a mortar and pestle? You fall asleep with a belly warmed by sugar and spice, dreaming of cinnamon trees and islands full of mangoes, where biscuits never existed and meals were soft, steaming, and served on real plates. The morning starts with a grim announcement: the meat's turned. You glance over at the culprit, a barrel of salted pork, lid pried open, and instantly wish you hadn't. The smell hits you like a wall of sour regret. Something between old socks and betrayal. Henley sighs, rubs his forehead, and kicks the barrel shut. Too hot down here, he mutters. Too long since we cleaned the brine. This is not an unusual moment on a pirate ship. Salted meat was a staple, pork, beef, sometimes fish, all packed into wooden barrels and drowned in salt until it resembled jerky's more malevolent cousin. But even salt has its limits. And the tropics are cruel. You join the crew in hauling the barrel up and tossing it overboard. Watching greasy chunks of meat sink into the blue. A few fish investigate. One immediately swims away. You don't blame it. Pirates depended on preserved meat to survive long voyages, but the success of that meat varied wildly. In theory, barrels were packed tightly with slabs of flesh, layered with salt until no air remained. In practice, rot always found a way. Especially if the ship was hot, wet, or someone forgot to reseal the lid. Historians still argue whether meat preservation on pirate ships was a science or just wishful thinking. Some logs describe meat so well preserved it outlasted 3 cooks. Others suggest captains intentionally gave the crew slightly spoiled rations to keep them drunk on grog and too sick to mutiny. Henley just says, meat's a gamble. With the pork gone, Henley gets creative. He pulls out dried legumes, what some optimist once labeled beans. They rattle like stones in a tin. He soaks them in seawater, muttering incantations, or curses, then sets them to boil. You offer to help. He hands you a knife and a sack of onions that are more bruised than bulb. Still, you peel. You slice. Your eyes water in the steam. The galley begins to smell, promising. By dinner, it's bean stew with pickled cabbage and hard biscuit, again. But somehow, it works. The beans are soft. The onions have melted into something sweet. Henley even sprinkled in pepper from the market stash. The cabbage cuts the salt, a crewmate mutters, tastes like something from a tavern. He means it as a compliment. You nod in agreement, scraping your bowl clean with a sliver of biscuit. This meal marks a turning point. The crew begins to understand that while the meat might betray you, beans are forever. They store well, cook slow, and rarely fight back. A few pirates even claim they prefer them to pork. They're lying. But it's a nice thought. Later that night, someone tells the tale of the ghost barrel, a cask of pork so haunted. It creaked on its own and leaked brine that spelled rude words. You laugh. You want it to be true. There's something deeply soothing about a meal that doesn't bite back, explode with spice, or hide a weevil surprise. Just a warm bowl of something basic, filling, and quietly humble. You fall asleep below deck, belly full, ears tuned to the soft creak of the hull and the occasional fart echoing in the dark. Beans, after all, come with side effects. But even the noise is comforting. It means people are fed, and on a pirate ship, that's as good as a lullaby. The next day is hot. The kind of heat that makes wood swell, tempers flare, and biscuits go soft in all the wrong ways. You drag yourself above deck, hoping for a breeze, but the air is syrup-thick and unmoving. Someone's passed out next to the water barrel, clutching a ladle like it's a sword. You step around them delicately. It's on days like this that you truly miss something cold, but cold is a luxury the open sea rarely offers. The only cool things on board are deep in the hold, barrels kept out of the sun, or the occasional soggy cloth draped over bottles in a sad attempt at refrigeration. You glance longingly at the horizon. Somewhere, there's ice. Just not here, luckily. Henley has an idea. He's rummaging through the galley, pulling out odd items like a magician prepping for a trick, citrus rinds, dried mint, a clay pot. You raise an eyebrow. Cool drink, he says, like it's obvious. He starts by soaking dried lemon peels in water. Not much flavor left, he admits, but it fools the tongue. Then he crushes the mint with the side of his knife and tosses it into the pot. A bit of sugar. A splash of vinegar. You blink, trust me, he grunts. Pirate lemonade. Historians still debate whether pirates drank anything remotely resembling lemonade, but records show citrus was prized, not just for flavor, but for fending off the dread scurvy. Oranges, lemons, even tamarind pulp were traded or stolen whenever possible. One British ship reportedly traded rum for limes. That's how serious it was. You sip the concoction. It's tangy, sweet, and oddly sharp. Not cold, but refreshing. You close your eyes and imagine it chilled, served with a sprig of fresh mint and a little umbrella. You also imagine a world where weevils don't exist. It's nice. Some pirates went even further with their drinks. When grog got old, they infused it with herbs. Some added spice. Others fermented tropical fruit into crude wines. Pineapple was a favorite. One ship experimented with banana wine. The result exploded. Literally. They never tried again. Henley once tried to brew fermented coconut fizz. It foamed impressively, then leaked through the deck. He was banned from distilling anything for a month. He didn't seem to mind. You help him crush more citrus. The smell is incredible, bright and sharp, slicing through the ship's usual Stewart perfume. A few crewmates gather, tin cups in hand, hoping for a taste. Henley glares but pours. Someone toasts to cool tongues and unburnt throats. Everyone laughs. Someone else suggests freezing the drink. That person is immediately mocked. Ice, on this ship, is a myth. A fairy tale whispered by sailors who've never crossed the equator. Still, you dream of cold melons. Icy jugs. A dessert that doesn't involve rum or regret. Henley says that once, in Port Royal, he ate something called frozen cream. He weeps softly at the memory. You weep with him. Later, you sip another round of pirate lemonade while lounging near the mast. The breeze has finally returned. It tugs at your shirt and cools the sweat on your back. The drink, still warm, somehow feels colder now. Or maybe you're just better at pretending. That evening, Henley tries something new. He boils mint, adds a dash of vinegar, sugar, and stale biscuit crumbs. The result is a kind of syrupy porridge. It's terrible. But it's not hot stew, and for that, everyone's grateful. You fall asleep with the taste of citrus still lingering. You dream of ice cubes shaped like treasure chests and chilled pies the size of cannonballs. It's absurd, yes. But no more absurd than this life, this floating world of salt, wind, and weirdly aggressive seagulls. One day, you think, you'll find land. Real land. With drinks that clink and meals that cool you down instead of setting your hair on fire. Until then, pirate lemonade will do. It begins with a sniff. A crewmate, missing 3 teeth and most of his sense of optimism, holds up a sack of flour and sniffs deeply. Then makes a face like he's just seen a ghost wearing nothing but mold. You peek inside. Yep. The flour has turned, not in a dramatic, spoiled meat kind of way. More subtle. It smells damp. A little sour. Maybe even alive. Henley confirms the worst with a sigh and a poke. We've got weevil flour. Weevils again. If the ship has a mascot, it's probably one of those tiny beetles with flour dust on its wings and a smug expression. You start to think they're planning something, but Henley, ever the unflappable culinary sorcerer, rolls up his sleeves. We bake anyway, he says. Today is biscuit day, not the kind you dunk in tea. No. These are ship's biscuits, jawbreakers made of flour, salt, and crushed dreams. But the last batch was used up, or turned into wall decorations, so it's time to make more. And apparently, today's flour is extra crunchy. You help build the fire on deck. A flat iron sheet is hauled out from the hold, an improvised baking surface, scorched and slightly warped from past attempts. Henley begins mixing the flour with seawater and just a splash of vinegar. For the illusion of flavor, he mutters. Historians still argue about how pirates managed baking at sea. Some claim they had small ovens or heat-shielded areas on deck. Others say they waited until shore to bake. What's clear is that when biscuits were needed, creativity bloomed. The dough is dry and gray, and smells vaguely of mildew and moral decline. But it forms into patties. Flat, round, and stubborn. You help lay them out on the iron sheet, spacing them carefully to avoid overlapping catastrophes. The heat of the midday sun helps. The fire below adds the rest. The biscuits cook slowly, hissing and puffing in places they probably shouldn't. The scent is a strange mix of toast and something more ancient. You decide not to think about it too hard. Someone nearby starts singing a work song, a low, rhythmic tune about baking and betrayal. You all join in by the second verse. Oh, the flour's gone bad, and the bugs are bold, but we'll eat it down, for the bread gets cold. It's terrible. It's perfect. Henley flips a biscuit with a knife. It clinks, they're done. You try one. Carefully. The outside is rock hard. The inside is only slightly softer. A bit gritty, definitely chewy, and with a distinct weevil-y crunch. But it's edible. Barely. The vinegar helps. Sort of. You find yourself chewing with purpose. You will conquer this food. Some pirates add dried fruit, raisins, currants, or whatever they could steal. Today you get a surprise handful of what might be papaya. It helps. Not enough to turn it into dessert, but enough to make it less of a punishment. Henley stores the rest in a sack, sealing it tight with wax. Good for 2 months, if we're lucky, he says. Then pauses. Or 2 days, if the weevils unionize. One crewman claims to have found a heart-shaped biscuit. Another claims his looks like a skull. Someone starts swapping them like playing cards. You trade yours for one with fewer dark spots. Later that night, the biscuits make another appearance, crumbled into stew, used as spoons, or toasted directly on coals. Someone uses one as a coaster. Someone else as a plate. One pirate plays it like a tambourine. It breaks. He eats it anyway. You keep one in your pocket, just in case. A snack. A weapon. A keepsake, and as you drift off that evening, stomach full of effort and carbohydrates, you feel oddly satisfied. You helped bake something. Something not terrible. Something that will, probably, still be here long after you're gone, which, on a pirate ship, is about as comforting as it gets. The sea is calm today, almost too calm. The kind of calm that makes sailors nervous, like the ocean is holding its breath. The sails hang limp. The water is glass. And worst of all, no fish are biting, which is a problem, because you're out of turtle, the biscuits are rationed, and the beans are gone, well, the edible ones. There's still that one sack marked "Do not open unless truly desperate," but Henley insists it's cursed. Or maybe fermented. Hard to say, so, the crew turns to the fallback option, fishing. Now, you might imagine pirates casting nets with practiced grace, hauling up glittering fish like Neptune's personal buffet. In reality, fishing on a pirate ship was a slow, cranky process involving fraying lines, improvised hooks, and a lot of very creative swearing. You're handed a line and told to think fishy thoughts. Not helpful. You sit at the edge of the ship, dangling the line, staring into the blue. Nothing happens for a long time. Then, a tug. A sharp one. You yank. The line tightens. You pull harder, and up comes seaweed. Congratulations. You've caught salad, others have better luck. One pirate hauls up a snapper the size of his boot. Another reels in something with too many eyes. Henley eyes it suspiciously. We'll boil it. Twice. Fishing was a vital but inconsistent food source for pirates. Some days, the ocean gave generously. Other days, nothing but jellyfish and disappointment. Historians still argue how much pirates relied on fishing versus raiding or foraging. Logs show both. Glorious seafood stews and weeks of nothing but biscuit and prayer. Eventually, your luck turns. You hook something heavy. It pulls hard. You dig in your heels, reel slowly, and up comes a grouper. Thick, mottled, and clearly annoyed. It flops onto the deck, tail thrashing, and earns you a rare nod of respect from Henley. Cooking begins immediately. Henley guts the fish with practiced speed, saving the head and bones for stock. He slices thick fillets, dusts them with salt and crushed peppercorns, and pan-fries them over a low flame. The smell alone is enough to make the lookout climb down from the rigging. You eat on deck, fish flaking gently under your spoon, juices soaking into soft biscuit crumbs. A squeeze of citrus from the last lime adds a tangy finish. It's delicious. Like something from a real tavern. Even the grumpiest crew members smile. Someone claims to have seen a mermaid earlier, near where you caught your fish. Maybe she sent it as a gift, he says dreamily. Maybe she wants me to visit. Henley responds by throwing a fish bone at his head. Later, someone roasts the fish skin over coals until it's crisp like chips. Another boils the bones with dried seaweed to make a salty broth. Nothing is wasted. Not even the eyes, which are allegedly good luck. You quietly decline. That night, the air is cooler. The wind has returned. You sit by the railing with the last scraps of grouper, sharing bites with a cat that may or may not belong to the ship. It purrs, then hisses at the waves. You both watch the horizon in companionable silence. Fishing days are rare. Good ones, rarer still. But when they come, they feel like small miracles, proof that the sea isn't always trying to kill you. Sometimes, it feeds you, and as your eyes grow heavy, belly full of fresh cooked fish and salt air, you find yourself hoping tomorrow brings another tug on the line. Another grouper. Or even just a big, friendly lump of seaweed. You'd eat it. Probably. You wake up to the smell of something burning. Not fire, not real fire, thank goodness, but something scorched. Something unmistakably. Bread adjacent, you scramble to your feet and follow the smoke trail to Henley, who's fanning a small, blackened pan and swearing under his breath in 3 different languages. There, on the skillet, sits a mostly charred, vaguely rounded lump of dough. Today, he mutters, we bake cake. You blink. Surely this is a hallucination brought on by too much salted fish. But no, Henley is serious. Turns out, it's someone's birthday. No one knows who, exactly. Records on pirate ships are fuzzy at best, but that doesn't matter. Any excuse to break monotony. And maybe sneak some sugar into the mix, is a good one. Henley has flour, a little brown sugar, and a suspicious-looking egg someone found during shore leave. There's no butter, no milk, no baking powder, and definitely no oven. But he has vinegar, citrus peel, biscuit crumbs, and blind optimism. Cake, he insists, is more about intention than ingredients. Historians still debate whether pirates ever ate true desserts. Some records mention duff, a boiled flour pudding with raisins or dried fruit, sometimes sweetened with molasses. Others describe sweet meat pies made from stolen sugar and dried dates. Whatever the truth, sugar was rare and valuable, so any dessert, no matter how primitive, was cause for celebration. Henley mixes the batter directly in a tin bowl, stirring with a knife. The texture is lumpy. He pours it into a shallow pan, covers it with a tin lid, and buries it in coals. You watch nervously. So does half the crew. 15 minutes later, there's a hiss, a puff of smoke, and an eruption of profanity. The lid comes off. The top is burnt. The bottom is undercooked. The middle? Actually, not bad. Sweetish. Warm. Soft. The crew cheers. The birthday pirate is lifted onto a barrel and given the largest piece. It's only slightly on fire. He cries a little. You're not sure if it's joy, pain, or both. You get a sliver yourself, chewy, citrusy, and filled with crunchy surprises that might be sugar or possibly sand. Doesn't matter. It's sweet. It's cake. And it's yours. Later, Henley passes around cups of special grog. This time, he's added spices and a dash of leftover vinegar syrup. It tastes like someone tried to make mulled wine and forgot how. Still, it's warm. You sip slowly, watching the sun dip below the horizon. That night, the crew gathers on deck. A fiddler starts playing a tune with only 3 notes. And everyone hums along. The birthday pirate makes a speech, thanking the ocean, the cake, and that one fish what looked like my mother. Everyone nods solemnly. There's laughter. There's singing. Someone throws a biscuit at the stars, and in the galley, Henley wipes out the cake pan and mutters, next time, rum frosting. You drift off with sugar on your tongue, the taste lingering like a memory. You dream of real cakes, layered, soft, made with butter and eggs that haven't traveled in a sweaty pouch for 3 weeks, but somehow, this strange little lump of sweetness means more than any bakery treat ever could, because on a ship full of salt and storms, one bite of cake is a reminder, you're still human. Still worth celebrating. The wind shifts just after midnight, you don't notice at first, tucked in your hammock, dreams filled with fish pies and cakes that don't contain surprise gravel. But above deck, the rigging creaks in a new direction. The sails tug like restless ghosts. By morning, the ship has veered toward open waters. And a brewing storm. By midday, the sky is dark. Not dramatic dark, not stage lighting dark. Just heavy, with low clouds and the kind of pressure that squeezes your eardrums and makes everyone speak in low, nervous voices. The sea chops restlessly. Rain's coming. Maybe more, and with it. Seasickness. It starts with one unlucky sailor. Then another. Soon, the deck smells like regret and last night's fish stew. You swallow hard, gripping the rail, trying not to join the chorus of groaning pirates huddled in corners. Henley's ladling something into buckets, lavender water. Rum with ginger. You can't tell. Nothing helps, you're informed today's meal will be hardtack and caution. Pirates didn't have seasickness remedies that actually worked, but they had theories. Raw ginger, citrus peel, mint leaves chewed slowly, or tying a red ribbon around your wrist to balance the humors. Some crews swore by drinking seawater. Those crews didn't last long. Henley, unfazed, starts boiling a pot of rice with vinegar and dried herbs. Gentle for the stomach, he mutters. Gentler than mutiny, anyway. You try a spoonful. It's bland. Almost soothing. Which, on this ship, is a miracle. You sip slowly, grateful not to taste the sea again. Others follow. Even the grumpiest gunners nod in approval. Historians still argue whether pirates cared much about nutrition during storms. Some claim food was skipped entirely. Others suggest that bad weather improved mealtime, since everyone's expectations dropped below zero. There's a certain logic to it. By nightfall, the storm breaks. Wind howls. Rain lashes sideways. Buckets fill with seawater. The ship groans like it's trying to escape itself. You cling to a post, soaked, cold, and cursing the day you ever met a salted fish. Then, miraculously, it passes. Just like that, the sky clears. The stars return, shy at first, then brilliant. The sea settles. The sails snap straight. And the crew starts laughing. Quietly at first. Then louder. No one died. Nothing broke. The ship still floats. Henley reappears from below, holding a skillet. Rain biscuit. He offers, you take one. It's soft. Rain-soaked. Weirdly comforting. You chew slowly, eyes on the stars, the memory of the storm still buzzing in your bones. Tonight's meal is nothing fancy. Leftovers. Crumbs. A bit of broth saved from earlier. But it's warm. It's here. And that's enough. You sit in a circle with the others, bowls in hand, telling half-true stories about sea monsters and haunted islands. Someone swears they saw a ghost with an eye patch. Someone else asks what ghosts eat. Henley answers, mostly bad stew. There's laughter, quiet and slow like the tide coming in. You stretch out on the deck, damp clothes clinging, but heart full. The ocean murmurs. The ship rocks gently, no longer trying to throw you off. The storm has passed. You're still here, still hungry. But still here, and now. Let the ship drift. You've eaten. You've survived the storm, and the fire below deck has softened to coals. Even Henley's knives are silent tonight, resting on the counter like soldiers off duty. The sea, too, has quieted. The waves no longer slap, they sigh. The sails flutter softly. You can hear the creak of the ropes, the distant flap of canvas, the gentle whisper of wind passing through empty mugs and biscuit tins. Above, the stars scatter across the sky like spilled sugar. The constellations shift slowly, quietly, pointing you toward morning, toward somewhere warmer, safer, slower. Your hammock sways, just a little. Not enough to startle. Just enough to remind you, the ship is still moving. Even as you fall still, the smells linger, faint traces of cinnamon, fish, salt, and lemon peel. Maybe even cake. You're not sure anymore. It doesn't matter. Your body remembers the warmth. Your hands remember the spoon. Your teeth still ache, slightly, from that biscuit 3 days ago. You smile. Tomorrow, there may be stew. Or beans. Or a miraculous melon from a market that doesn't exist, but for now, you rest. Rocked by the tide. Fed by memory. Wrapped in calm. Good night, sailor, the sea will keep you.